Mixing with Mike plugin of the week is the Neve 88RS channel strip with Unison technology. So this is a recent release as of the date of this video, which is May in 2015. And what this is this is an emulation of the Neve 88RS console, which came out in 2001. Now, there is an existing emulation of this exact channel strip, and this is a new release, which is taking the existing Neve channel strip emulation to another level. So if we take a look at the old one, you could see here some of the basic similarities between the two, and also some of the additions with the new plugins. So what you primarily have here on the original is the dynamic section, gate and compressor, and you could see that that matches up perfectly with this section right here. You could see the metering for the gain reduction, which is moved up here. You could see a fader, which is the P&G fader that comes with the console, Penny and Giles fader. You could see the EQ sections here and here, which kind of line up. And the filter section, which is moved over here. So what's different about the two is that while some of the stuff is kind of primarily moved around, is that you have a whole input amplification section, and then you have a fader on the outside. You also have a meter here, which is added in, like a VU meter showing your overall level. Now, on the actual unit itself, there is a meter display. It's not a VU needle type of meter, but is a meter actually that has a ballistic that allows you to set it to a variety of different peak or RMS settings, and it does have a VU sort of ballistic to it. So they're doing that there without putting the analog meter on, because it didn't really exist on the original console. But what we have primarily here is the ability to go mic or line input on the audio signal. We have gain controls for the line and the mic preamp, phase inversion. And the way that this primarily works now is that this is added into the Universal Audio Unison technology. If you're not familiar with the Unison technology, then what I'll show you here is that if you boot up the console is a software that basically manages Universal Audio hardware. So if you have a UA interface, then you have, like in this example, you can see there are 4 preamps here. What I can do here is I can actually insert in here any one of 5 Unison technology plugins up to the point of this video. There probably will be more if you're watching this video at some later time. So this is like May 2015. So somewhere down the line, I'm sure they'll be adding more. The API Vision channel, the 1073 preamp emulation, the 88RS, which is the one we're looking at now, and the UA 610A and B. And so what that does is it connects the hardware, mic pre, gain control, phase revert, and filter on the actual hardware unit itself to the software. And they're actually connected to each other. So if you switch one on one, it switches to the other. And so here, if we enable this technology, you're not going to hear this in anything I'm doing now, but this would work within the architecture of the incoming signal, so that you would be using this mic preamp that you would have set here. And so when you switched it to mic input, then you would actually control your gain from here, or you would see it move if you were actually moving the knob on the actual hardware piece, including the phase inversion, and then they also have an impedance matching element to it all. And so, and that's primarily from the console. In a DAW, you don't get that full emulation, but you can still take an incoming signal and overdrive it as if you were feeding it into a mic preamp, so it doesn't become useless. And there is an actual gain stage here. In the actual signal flow, the next thing in the signal path, so on the real channel strip, this is much truer to the original and the way that it's laid out than what the legacy version, as it's now called, is. So right directly below the preamp stage is the filter. So this is right after the mic pre or line amp input. And so that's typical of most consoles. The first thing you do is you filter low and or high frequencies. And then you go through the compressor gate section down here, and then you have the equalization section, and then you have the ability to make this EQ, if it's in, pre-dynamics or post-dynamics. So we have that ability. So some of these things, like if this is not in circuit, then this won't light up, and that kind of thing. So there's like some interaction and connection between all the things. Now, this actual emulation, what it does is it actually uses their upsampling technology. So part of the way that they get the higher resolution and the ability to emulate the nonlinearities of the actual hardware unit is by upsampling. They can get more of that detail. So one of the things that's very unique about analog technology is that there is interactivity between the components. And sometimes when you skew one thing one way, it'll have a different characteristic sound or a different shape or some other harmonic distortion characteristic that it doesn't have at a slightly different gain stage. And so what they've done by emulating this, you're capturing more of the real true sweet spot of the analog gear. And what I mean by sweet spot is that every piece of analog gear has a place where it sort of operates at its premium. And that's kind of the way engineers would use them. And so it might be a particular gain staging through the actual unit itself. It might be a particular compressor setting, like a particular ratio setting, just always seems to sound better than another ratio setting. There are sweet spots with all this analog gear. And so this helps to bring out those characteristics. So you're getting more of the amplification, harmonic distortion. You're getting the characteristics of it actually going through the Penny and Giles fader. You're getting the harmonic distortion characteristics that occur throughout every gain stage and part of the plug-in path. So it's really, really cool. Now, it's quite a complicated signal flow, and I could make this a very lengthy thing on the actual unit, but I'll kind of go through some of the basics here. And then I'll take this other guy out of the circuit here because we don't really need to see him. So we'll start here with just like some simple technology. So one of the basic things you could do is, right, I can actually just overdrive this. So I'm going to bring the gain down here. So sorry about that. And I could actually overdrive the input. And you do get a lot of gain here. So I can overdrive my input stage. And you can hear kind of like some of the clarity or openness that's kind of brought into that. So you can kind of overdrive it. I kind of like that. I didn't initially plan on keeping that, but what the hell. If I don't want to adjust from the fader here, I can also pull down my gain from this side and then just kind of keep it on that end. So I can, maybe keep this at like its normal. Get the gain from here. So I kind of like that presence. Now, as we go through, if I decided I wanted to filter here, these are push-pull switches. So if you click on where it says pull, then you have a high frequency filter, 12 dB per octave, so it's a second order noise filter, or we could filter off some sub-frequencies, which starts at 31 hertz. So it's actually quite musical, in terms of the layout. We may not want to use any of it at all right here. And this goes down only to 7.5K. So it doesn't have like a broad range, but that's very true to the hardware. So we'll just kind of leave that open on the top end. I really like the limiter compressor, and it has some interesting features. One is there's a link control for the stereo unit. What that does is, if you open up a stereo channel, it will link the settings on the left side and the right side, so the gain reduction is even on both sides. If you don't link it, then what ends up happening is that the left side and the right side may react differently. So if the program material is significantly different on the left, right, say on a piano or drums or whatever, a tom that kicks in on one side, it will compress more on that side and not on the other. And sometimes that can create some inconsistencies in the sound, right? Or some weird movement in the sound. And sometimes that's kind of cool. So it depends on the individual instrument. There's a makeup gain control here. If you pull up on it, then you have a hard knee. And so that makes the compressor more aggressive. The threshold control, there are many push-pull switches on this. So when you pull up here, it changes the threshold down by 20 dB lower than the reading that you see here. So if this is not going low enough, you could do it from there. The ratio goes 1:1 at its lowest setting all the way up to a limiter setting. And you could see there's quite a broad range here. So that's 1 to 1, that's 3 to 1, straight up 5 to 1, and then it goes all the way up to limiting, which would be, I'm not sure exactly what those numbers are, but that would be at least 20 to 1. So you could see that there's sort of a much broader range in terms of the movement of the compressor. And then you have a release time here, which goes from 0.01 seconds, which is like 10 milliseconds basically, all the way up to an auto release setting. So you can actually click into an auto release setting. And then I think the highest release time is something like 3 seconds, if I'm not mistaken. There is a fast attack and a slow attack. Now, what's interesting about the attack time is that it is transient sensing, so it's not fixed like many compressors. So what'll happen is in a fast setting, it'll be as quick as 1 millisecond, but as slow as 7 milliseconds. And on the slow setting, it's at its fastest is 3 milliseconds, and then as slow as 7 milliseconds. So that's, to me, is like, fast and medium fast as opposed to fast and slow in terms of the attack time. So we can kind of get that, on the pull fast control. So that is true to the original. All of the expander controls are very similar. So the release times are here. The range, which is the equivalent of the ratio for the gate, is here. Threshold is here. Same pull, except minus 40 instead of minus 20. And there's a hysteresis control instead of a makeup gain. Hysteresis sets the difference between the open threshold and the closed threshold. So you see in some plugins where you have one that opens up the signals, opens up the gate, and then a lower threshold that closes the gate. And this prevents chatter and allows more of a natural decay of things like reverbs or the decay of a tom or something like that. And so this is an additive to the threshold. So the open threshold you can increase by as much as 25 dB different from the threshold setting. So you would set your difference, and then this would move both of them, because this is relative to this. So if that confuses you, you might want to take a look at the manual, but you could put the gate expander. This is not the greatest example and not really the primary reason why you're going to want to use this plugin anyway. So let's kind of get on to the compression setting. So you see your gain reduction up here, right? So you see there's already a fair amount of gain reduction. The metering is just exactly like it is on the console in terms of the LED segments and everything. And you pretty much have to do it by sound, So it can be pretty heavy. Now, it's purposely kind of designed to not have a, it has a circuit built into it that kind of prevents a little bit of pumping and breathing. So it's not the type of compressor that you get like a FET compressor, like an 1176, where you can really get that heavy breathing movement and you kind of want that sound from it. You're not really going to get that from this, but you can get like a really very musical, you could get a very musical kind of compression from it. So I'm going to add a little makeup gain. So you could hear how that's still pretty good. Here's the let's go to a fast attack here. So there's a significant difference there in terms of the sonically, although the numbers aren't dramatically different. I also want to show you what the hard knee setting is, because this might be good with the slow attack. So a little more aggressive. Now I can go a little bit lighter with the ratio here, kind of swing this over a little bit this way, and that might allow us to go a little bit lower with the threshold. I think the sweet spot is somewhere in between. So this is just like on a stem for drums and bass. On individual instruments is just like they could make this thing go on forever. Let's kind of go on just to give you a quick demonstration of what that sounds like. Then there's also and you can really hear like the warmth and character of it. So let's just kind of listen to that and openness of it. So I didn't expect that overload thing to kind of be there that way, but it actually ends up working kind of cool. Let's put the EQ section in here. Now, with the EQ, you have some really unique features. You have a normal boost parametric on the top end. The high Q narrows the bandwidth of the Q. And you can make it a shelving EQ, which overrides the parametric setting. So if we wanted to do a boost on the top end, sort of maybe like a classic, like a 10K shelf or 12K shelf, something like that. And if I wanted to, go down here to the low mid band, I could go and scoop out a little bit of like 200 here. Kind of open up the low end a little bit, and this is just a full parametric with the Q right here. So we have it. So what we have is basically a 4-band EQ. So you can see the sort of darker blue color here. These guys are together. Gain, the frequency goes upside down in terms of the knob movement, and then you got the Q control, which is wide to narrow. Here you got the Q control here, gain here, and again the frequency knob for the high mids is upside down as well, or backwards, and then same thing. So all the frequencies are upside down. I think from the design of the console, the reasoning for that was as you're looking at it from the console, if you think about sitting in front of a console, if you're looking down at the console, you can't see the numbers that are over the top. But you could see them here. And there are no real numbers for the Q control or the gain control, so that doesn't matter. You can just kind of do that naturally. That's part of the reasoning for doing it out that way, so you can actually see the numbers as you're looking down at the desk. But let's take and do like a good low boost here, and I'm going to focus this on a high Q. Exaggerating it a little bit, and then we can see what that sounds like. Very tight, a little warmer, and then we can make it even warmer. Kind of like that mid in there, the middle setting, which is just like the normal bell curve. And that's the basic EQ setup. And you could put any of these things in. I could also put this prior to the compressor by hitting the pre-dynamics. Sounds much better afterwards, which is, kind of typical depending upon what it is. If you're doing radical EQ, sometimes putting it before the compressor allows the compressor to kind of pull the sound together. Overall, like really amazing. This is, it's hard to do a shootout with these in terms of being the two of them side by side, and the primary reasoning is that when you move the knob settings here, you don't get exact readings. It doesn't give you like numbers or some numerical display, and there's a good part of that which forces you to use your ear and just listen and make your judgments accordingly, which is exactly like the real equipment itself. You don't have numbers or numerical display that shows you that. That's a digital DAW world thing, and digital consoles would have that type of thing. And so to get the settings to be exact, to make like some kind of phase inverted comparison so that you could hear the difference, I don't think is really fair. Just from my general use of this, I can tell you that it is significantly more vibrant and alive than the standard plugin. So that's meant to be like for more like the regular tracks, because this is going to be more CPU intensive than the others here. I have an Octo satellite here, and so you could see here 4 stereo instantiations. I don't have I have a couple of HLF3Cs on here. Other than that, no other universal audio plugins, and that's only 12%, so that's still not too bad. on that side. I also have the setting which it basically optimizes, so it only adds as much processing as elements that I'm using. So if I switch this gate expander on, this number may switch up, because now I'm using more processing by adding in different components. So the more components you use, basically the moral of the story is that, the more percentage you get from the CPU usage of your satellite. But that's it. Really, really cool one. I love this console. I spent years working on this console. I really know it. It's classic. It's a great desk, and it's in some of the top studios in the world, including Abbey Road Studios, and Ocean Way in Los Angeles, and it's really, really an amazing desk. So definitely worth checking out this one, and at least downloading a demo to kind of check it out. If you already have the existing 88RS, then there's a discounted price, an upgrade price, quote unquote, for that makes it a little bit sweeter to buy. Really good one. Another great plug-in hardware emulation of some classic analog gear by Universal Audio, the Neve 88RS with Unison technology.